Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and welcome to a lesson on building software. This is an essential skill where compiling software from the source code is something I've found myself having to do many different times. And we're going to build a big one today. We're going to build the GCC compiler. And I often find myself having to do this when I have had to compile, say, legacy games, for instance, or operating systems using an older and compatible version of GCC. So I'm going to show you how to do it from the version control system so that you can build any version of GCC, whether it's an older version for legacy software or whatever the latest version of GCC is that comes out in the future. So you'll want to strap up and get ready for this ride here. And with that said, let's go ahead and begin. All right, so just taking a look at GCC 11, which is the latest at this time of the recording, we can see some of the changelog and the different features that are built into and provided by GCC 11. Now, as a C++ programmer, I'm really excited about this because the default for C++ is now version 17 in the compiler, which is something I frequently use. And I'm also excited about other things like D-language being built in Go and all these other different compilers that are supported, or rather backends that are supported in the front ends, all within the GCC compiler toolchain. But if you're watching this, well, you already know that. That's why you're here for GCC, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is just search for, again, GCC on the web here and find the actual tools here. And I'm going to want to build GCC by clicking on whatever the latest version is or the version that you desire. Since we're going to be doing this from source code, it's not really going to matter. So I've clicked on this link here for GCC 11.2, and I want to actually navigate to the version control system. Now, GCC uses Git, so a little bit of Git familiarity will be useful, but we're not going to be doing anything too complicated. And what's also interesting about this for folks who are used to GitHub is, well, they're using Git and you get to see what a version control system that is Git looks like that is not GitHub. Again, those are different tools. But anyways, let's go ahead and download GCC by cloning the repository. So I'm going to follow this exact direction here, and I'll make it nice and big for you here, where I'm going to clone the repository. And by specifying a directory afterwards, it will clone into that directory. And I'm perfectly fine just naming it some local directory here. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and just git clone here. And depending on your system, this is going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to pop out of here, and then we'll see you in a moment when this is completed. All right, so that process has finished. It took about 2 or 3 minutes on my machine, so not too bad overall to download everything. But it is worth at this point going into our local directory here and just taking a look at some of the files here. And you're going to notice a bunch of different files here, some of our build files, compilation files, and as always, I recommend taking a look at the README here. Anytime you download some code, it'll usually give you some useful instructions on how to build it here, or just a little bit about what the actual project is. All right, so before I get ahead of myself, I just want to go ahead and reference what we're going to do here, because on my machine, I have GCC version 10.3. Now that's a pretty late or modern version by today's standards in 2022 when I'm recording this, but again, we're going to want a later version. So within this directory that I have here, which is again a Git repository, I can search for different versions of GCC to check out here. So for example, I can look at all the different branches and get whatever version of GCC I want. Now, this is going to be a little bit intimidating as I scroll through all the different versions here, but you will notice that, well, scrolling up here, I can find at the latest time the version 11 of GCC that, again, is the latest at this time and what I would want to build. It might be useful to figure out why I'm doing this, why I'm looking for a specific branch of GCC. Well, if I go ahead back to the web page here and look at the repository, and we can browse the history, what I've downloaded is the latest and greatest and sort of work in progress GCC. This is around version 11.2. I just want one that's sort of been marked off and knows that it's been completed at a specific time. Because, well, as developers are adding new things, there could be bugs that get fixed and iterated on and performance improvements and so on, so I want to check out a specific version of GCC. This will also make it a little bit easier for you so that you can repeat this exercise and build the same version that I'm building. So let me go back to our terminal here, and I'm just going to highlight here the release here for GCC 11, And again, if you're a little bit new to Git, what you're going to do is do git checkout, whatever that highlight was here with GCC 11 here, the whole string, hit enter, and it's just going to take a moment to make sure that the repository is in the state or the commit for those who speak Git at which GCC 11 was built, which happens to be here. All right, so now that that's been done, let me go ahead and just orient us a little bit for what we're going to do for actually building our project here. Because again, it's fun to just dive into a project and build, and it's good to also just check in for a moment where we are in the build process. So what we've essentially done is gone into Git, which is hosting a bunch of the files here. We have the GCC project, and we've downloaded this onto our local machine somewhere. So here's our machine here, and we have GCC on our machines. And then what I've done is from this directory is I've gotten a specific version of Git, or rather GCC, excuse me, that's GCC version 11 that I've checked out here. So we're working with GCC version 11 here. All right, and now what I'm going to do on my local machine here is create another directory. So somewhere else other than where our source code is here. So I'm going to have some sort of source directory here, sometimes abbreviated SRC. And then I'm going to create a separate build directory where I'm going to build the actual project. Sometimes folks will build the source within the actual source code repository. I like to build outside of it in a bin directory or a build directory to keep them separate. It makes it easy if I need to recompile the source code. Anyway, that's just a little direction of what we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and figure out how to do that. So an easy way to figure out how, well, is to search build GCC. Of course, you're watching this video, I'm going to show you, but again, as time moves on, you might want to figure out how to find these resources. So you can go ahead down to the configuration here and figure out a little bit just about how to build GCC. Now they're doing this a little bit different by downloading a specific version of GCC here and then building it, but really what we want is this sort of magic line here, which is building the different versions of, or rather building GCC with different language support and enabling any other options that we want. So we're going to need this tool called configure on our system in order to do this. We'll need make, and we might have some dependencies that we need to fix as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this in the corner here while we build. And again, I want to be able to build this in some other directory here. So I'm going to make a directory, one back here, and I'm just going to call it GCC 11 build and cd into that directory. So again, you can see where my different path is. Again, this is where I want to be doing the build. And typically speaking, we're going to need this tool called configure. So you can just type in configure here. I guess there's no man page here, but you'll know if you have it on your system if you do /configure, and you'll get some error message saying no file or directory or whatever. I'll show you how to actually run this tool in a moment here. If you are missing these tools on Linux, do apt git install. Build Essential has most of these tools, but you could just type in configure and it'll usually figure it out. Okay, but let's go ahead and get to this portion here where we want to actually build GCC. So let me just hop out for a minute so you can see all the instructions. And what I'm going to do from in this file is I need to navigate to wherever I was building here, and that was just some local directory. And I'm just going to type in configure. So we'll see that configure tool is available here. And then I'm going to, well, follow these directions here. Now the prefix, what I'm specifying here, and perhaps let me make this a little bit longer just so you can see everything on one line here, is going to specify where we sort of want our output to be in our program here. That's this flag here. So this one I do care about. I'm just going to put it in my current directory where I am, and then which languages we want to enable. So I'm going to do C, C++, and I'm going to change things up a little bit and do the D programming language because I like that one, and that one's one that is available since GCC 9, I believe. All right, so let me just orient things so that they fit here nicely on our screen. So you can see everything on one line. Nice and easy. And let's just go ahead and give this a try here. All right, so configure the prefix. I am in my home path here. If I want, I can also specify GCC 11 build, or I can just do the current directory here, like this. And let me actually just follow what they have here, just so that we're safe. Home, and let's do GCC 11, and I'll just put my name here. And we want to enable languages equal to C, C++, and the D language. And again, just so you can see clearly, here is everything on one line here. Okay, so go ahead and hit enter, and let's see what happened here. Okay, so it looks like this ran here, but did we run into some errors here? So the configure tool is going to run for a little bit, and don't be alarmed if you get some errors here. That's natural. That's why we're learning how to build this here. So it says, well, we're missing some of these tools here, these dependencies. So let's go ahead and try to fix them here. So I'm going to keep those highlighted just so we can keep an eye on them. And if you're using Ubuntu or something, you can actually search for packages, like for instance, mpfr, and you can just type that in here. And usually this is what we're looking for, the dev library. If you don't like using that search, let me just show you another way you can find this. You can do apt cache search. And again, this library is, GP something or mpfr. So let me do mpfr. And this will give us a list of all these libraries. Now you do have to sort of search through these different libraries. So a little trick I do is often I grep for dev, and I can find these associated libraries here. So to me, it looks like we're missing the mpfr dev library here for precision floating. So again, I'm just going to do sudo apt get install and this dev library here. And I'll need to pass in my name here, agree yes here. And essentially, I'm going to repeat this process for each of the missing dependencies. So on the right side, I'll do a little bit of my debugging. Here on my left side, I'm going to try to rebuild GCC. And let's see if we are missing our commands here. So it says now we're missing GMP. It still says we're missing this particular library. And a little hint sometimes when that happens is even if I've installed it on this terminal, I might need to restart this actual shell so it can recognize the different changes. So I'm going to go ahead and try each of these 3 libraries here, and then we'll go ahead and resume by restarting this shell and continuing with our configure process of GCC. All right, so let me hop out of here so you can see, and let's go ahead and try the same thing with the MPC library here. First, searching for it, seeing if there's a dev library, and in fact there is, that I recognize here. So sudo apt get install, and we'll go ahead and do the installation. And we're going to need to do this for the GMP library as well. So again, find something at GMP. And this looks like it has a few different options here. But again, it looks like this is the right one. Now there are 2 different versions here, GMP3 and just the one that's not listed here. So this says we need 4+ here. So let's go ahead and see if we install this dependency, if that takes care of things. Now this does say GMP version 4 here, so I might have to install a few of these. Let me actually try this one here and see if it gives us the right installation. And I'll hit yes and give that a moment to install. And again, I'm doing this and debugging this as I figure things out so you can see what to do, because you're likely to have different dependencies that might be missing than I am, but that's the sort of process here. Okay, so let me go ahead and shrink this window here. And again, if I run this command here, let me just go ahead and hang on to this command for a moment. So I'm going to copy it, close this shell down, as I mentioned, because oftentimes you'll have to restart and move into a different shell so that the installations that we did on this side that's above me can take place here. So let's go ahead and try this. And let's see if we get some different errors. Okay, so while I'm convinced that these are the prerequisites that we need, there's actually another way that we can obtain these. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up a from our terminal window here, cd into the GCC, or rather the some local build directory here, and cd into contrib, and do /download prerequisites here. And this will be, and let me move out of the way here, how we can get the prerequisites here. So this is just something I was reading about that I'll install those and make sure that you have the right versions. Now it's warning that you must run this script from the top level directory. So again, let's just think about what that means. I need to cd up one directory and then specify this, okay? So let me cd up one directory, /contrib, download prerequisites. This is the command here from the directory on our GitHub repository. I'll hit enter here. And now this is going to download, well, we can see the exact GMP libraries. It looks like I was able to download those dependencies, but my Ubuntu package manager may not be up to date with the latest versions here. So looks like it's downloaded, and now I can go ahead and try to rerun configure here. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's make the font a little bit bigger and try this command again and see what happens here. All right, so this time it does look like it was successful because it created a make file. Make, again, is a GNU tool, and we can see all the different things that were built here. All right, so now it's time to actually do the build process. So if I look here, I've got the make file in my separate bin directory here, and I can just type in make and wait. But in order to speed up my build a little bit, I've got about 12 cores on this machine, so I can run 12 different threads to build, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you'll see things going by very quickly here as it's building. If for whatever reason your software doesn't build, try just running make itself, and on occasion I've had trouble with parallel builds where something will get built in the wrong order or whatever reason that might happen. So you can just go ahead and slow things down. Anyways, I'm going to pop out of here and let this build, and I'll let you know approximately how much time this took when I come back. Alrighty folks, so that took start to finish on my machine about 32 minutes, so hopefully you've grabbed your coffee as you're watching this and have started the compilation process, and looks like things have worked. Now, as I scroll through some of my output, it looks like it built successfully. You might get some different warnings, and typically it looks like this is okay. The program actually still built, and we should have our compiler. So let's see what we actually built here. So I'll just go ahead and clear our terminal, do an ls, and well, we've got a bunch of files here beyond our make file, which we had previously built. All right, now, one little experiment that I want to actually do here is just run GCC like I did in the version, and you're going to notice that it still says version 10.3 here. Well, I thought I just built version 11. So let me actually take us back to our install instructions here, and let me go ahead and open those up here, and you'll see that there's still one more step that we need to do, make install, and that's going to set up the compiler paths for us so that we can just simply use GCC and do the latest version here. So let me go ahead and do make install, and this should only take a few moments, and I'll go ahead and just let this run through again, and this time only taking about less than a minute here. All right, so now let's go ahead and try our experiment here. If I do GCC version here, well, still version 10.3, so let's go ahead and try to figure out where did version 11 actually build to. So let's begin our search. Well, in order to begin our search here, let me go ahead and wind back through our commands just so we can see everything. This is essentially what we did our build. Now remember, I actually made my prefix path this GCC 11 directory here. So let me go ahead and open up another terminal here and cd into GCC, that's capital 11, Mike here. So we can see this on the right side. This is where we are actually building things from our configure command. Again, some folks will put it in this directory or wherever, but let's actually move in here and see what we built here. And now here I actually see a bin directory here. So if I cd into bin here, we'll see all the different tools that have been built here. And I do see C++, G++, and so on. So let me actually do G++. And I'm putting the / here to make sure that we're referring to, from the relative directory, this GCC. And just like that, I see version 11.2 here available. And I also see stuff like for the D programming language, for example, the GDC compiler here. And let's see if I can get a little bit of help here, just so that we can see again that we have this compiler at its latest version here using GCC 11.2. So if you'd like, you could now go ahead and link these to be the latest G++. So for example, instead of just typing in G++, you could refer to the latest version. For now, I'm actually going to leave this as is, as I don't want to make this my default, because I'm probably going to erase this directory and install it again and again and again over time. But again, if you need multiple versions or something that is the latest and greatest version, you are welcome to do that. All right, folks, so with that said, let's go ahead and wrap up that lesson here. And in this lesson, you have hopefully learned how to build the GCC compiler tool suite, whether that's the C language, C++, I chose the D programming language, but you could do Go, Fortran, and so on. I know it's a lot to take in all at once, and it can take a little bit of time to build, but it is really satisfying once you fix the dependencies and get everything up and running. So if you found this useful, please go ahead and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any other lessons on useful software development, whether it's building software, talking about, or doing tutorials on some of these programming languages. This is the channel where you can see some of that information. All right, take care, folks.